Okay, this is a review for the KZ AST. It's a 12 balance armature set. I wasn't expecting to actually do a review for this set, but it's pretty good. Compared to the ASX, which I think is 10 BA, this beats it in every... It's got much better tonality. It's a better value because it's a better sounding set. I think it's got better bass. Mids are close. I like the mids on this better because they don't jut up like they do on the ASX. The treble on this set is much better, the AST. The stage is... Sometimes that big gain will give you a lot of psychoacoustic illusions, including a sense of stage, and it's difficult to determine which one. This one has more subdued late treble, but I still am catching the sense of space. I think resolution on the AST, it just sounds like a cleaner set. So that's the Spidergraph. It's an AST all the way over the ASX. I just wasn't a fan of the ASX. This is Spoonman. I'll get to that in a second. This is the... Okay, they look nice. They've got a vent right here, and they've got another one inside right here. There's no like suction or like that vacuum that you sometimes get with something like the Lokahi, which I love as a set, but that is an issue. It doesn't happen with this set. It says on the side 24 balanced armature. Yeah, total. There's 12 inside here. I don't know why they keep doing that. Let me go ahead and close this. 130 bucks. They're asking for more money. They're getting better at what they do, though. Let me go ahead and take a look at the frequency graph. This is elevated sub-bass and mid-bass. In my opinion, it's a compensation curve or bump for balanced armatures. Balanced armatures in their ideal form for me are elevated on the frequency graph because they're trying to imitate a dynamic driver without having the penalty of a dynamic driver, which is if you task a driver past its ideal point, you're going to create a veil or a haze that's going to go over the mids because it's just microseconds too slow, or the tuning in the cavity. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with a dynamic driver that has just a little bit too much bass in it. It'll mess up whatever's following it, and actually everything is following it. The mids, the upper mids, the treble. A haze can get created by a dynamic driver that's a little bit too elevated. Balanced armature is done with some elevation to imitate a dynamic driver. Don't have that speed issue, and you can get a sense of, like the Lokahi does, like an authentic bass replay without the penalty. I'm a dynamic driver lover. All of my most high-ranking sets have a dynamic driver in it, but when you get to the lower stuff, there's a benefit to having balanced armatures. So they've given this a bump, but I think it needs it. The mids are not what I would call ideal by a graph. Let me put up my own target. I'd like something that corrects itself, but again, this is balanced armature, and it's not impacting my listening experience. And let me get a little more specific with that into the music. First thing, I'm going to have to go all the way the other way. So give me just a second. Yeah, I'm trying to go to Kill Jill. Kill Jill is a deck mixed. It's a triple beat, pretty much. It's got a middle drop that's significant. And we're almost there, and I see it. Here we go. Big Boy featuring Killer Mike and Jeezy. This has got the triple hit. It's also got Hatsune Miku, which is a Vocaloid at the beginning, and that's a computer-generated female voice, and it can really get on with a lot of stuff. And that's why the ASF that came before this was just a no-go, because this is literally one of the first tracks I listened to, and while the bass sounded okay, before I can get to the bass, I got to get through the Vocaloid, and which is the intro, and I couldn't do that on the ASF. It was just obnoxious. This set actually did that well, and then I put slam, plus mark, that went well, good, moving on. And then the second thing that I tried was the first ding, and really the only ding that I would put on this. This is Black Sabbath, Masters Reality, Sweet Leaf, and this is from about 3:20 to 3:45, pretty much a 25-second window that I'm really focused on. The timing stamp on this is slightly different because it's a video, but they stayed really, really close to what they made about 50 years ago. And here's, you can see the bassist right here, right there, what he's doing. Very, very, very fast pulls and releases. You can see his fingers right there. That is hard to get. There's a lot of gear that plays that where I can hear the pulls and the pulls and the pulls, and I don't really hear the releases because just the quality of the transducer, whether it's a dynamic or balanced armature, isn't up to the task of what this guy's doing right here. Regular bass play, you know, death metal and stuff with a high BPM also would probably be difficult. But with my library, I go with this one, and this actually does it pretty good. But the only minus that I put on this paper was there was a tiny bit of, I guess you could call it smearing, where I can catch the pull and the release, and it seems like the very end of that, which I can catch on really high-end gear, was a little, kind of went, just transitioned right into the next pull. Like I couldn't really resolve or determine with my ears easily the very ending of what he's doing right here. He's pulling, he's releasing very, very quickly. And it's an enjoyable listen, but if I'm trying to find the weak point of stuff, this would be what I would say would be the weak point with my library. But I enjoyed the replay overall. Well, Ozzy didn't sound offensive. The guitar sounded great. Everything is slightly subdued. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Took it in for a second. Okay, we're done. So that was maybe slightly a weak point. Led Zeppelin. I actually listened to Blind Faith, Can't Find My Way Home. I wanted to listen to the Significant Strike at 27 and also 38 seconds because the second one can be really strong. This tones that down just a smidgen, but it doesn't. If you think about a cymbal strike, imagine a diamond, and you take the diamond and you turn it sideways. So if you got a diamond that looks like this, and then you turn it sideways. And so the beginning of the diamond is the strike. That's when the stick hits the cymbal, and then it's got its apex point, which would be the top of that pyramid, and then it tails off. That's the decay of that sound. If treble is a little bit abruptly cut, but the early treble or the upper mids is fine, it'll sound like the right side of that diamond is literally lopped off. Like you can't really catch that, and your brain is struggling just a little bit because it sounds like tsh. There's really no tail to it. And then if you've got too much energy, it'll sound like a tss, like a too much. Like the driver is actually not getting the info anymore, but it's still getting back. Just a microsecond, but it sounds wrong to you. Can you understand? And that would be like taking the diamond and turning it facing up, where you would have an action point that is not very wide, but it would be quite loud because you're getting a psh instead of a tsh. Like the normal sound, which should have some life to it in the tail. The reduced treble on this set actually gives that diamond, put it to its side, and that tail sounds like it's going down in amplitude, like it's reflected on the scale, but that sounds nice, actually. I don't want every set to sound exactly the same, so I'm not even going to ding it for that, and I trip on cymbals for years and all the time. Aerosmith is right here. I've shown this more than any song that I've ever shown on my channel's history. No More, No More, 7 seconds, 13 seconds, 2 significant strikes. They sound there, but they don't sound like there's trouble coming. They sound perfect. Remember that diamond. Turn the diamond up the long way. That's the wrong way to hear cymbals because you're just hearing the strike, not really anything else. There's no life to it. There's no birth, life, and death to it. Turn it on its side, and then you've got the event, the apex, and then the roll, the decay, to basically the death of the cymbal strike. So this is a set that is tilted with lower treble, but it actually sounds good with my library. This is a surprise review. I did not think I was even going to do a video for this. Expectations. Sometimes it doesn't turn out the way that you think it will. So low frequency events, bass guitar, everything sounded fine. It struggled a little bit with the speed of the pulls and releases. Dire Straits, Sultans of Swing. The bassist can sometimes sound like he's overwhelming if there's too much bass and really pushes into Mark's vocals. In this, it's not. Mark sounds like he's a little bit back, but he's not being overwhelmed by the bass because it's bass by BA. So it's not lingering a little too long, microseconds too long. It's actually fine. He's notably to my brain, just a step back. But the guitar solo that Mark does, which is what this really is famous for, I trip on the bass, but most people think of the solo that he does. This is what it's iconic for, and also the way that he handles an axe is kind of unique. Just his posture, the way he holds the guitar, the whole thing he's just fucking cool, I guess is what I'm trying to say. This is a very acceptable and actually enjoyable listen of Sultans of Swing. And when the levee breaks I was busting out the air hi-hats, you know, boom, 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 boom. The whole thing. The harmonica comes in. I got no problem with it. It sounds fine. I didn't really notice the harmonica till I bring that up, but that's a good thing because the harmonica is something that can kind of grate on you. Low end is fine. The vocals that exist really in the mids and guitars, it depends on the master, but it seems like most of the time I'm kind of enjoying my listen. I'm not really having any problems with it at all. This is the Led Zeppelin album that I listened to and enjoyed it quite a lot. Another thing that I listened to was In Bloom by Nirvana, because again, I'm listening to bass and I'm listening to vocals, and I thought it actually sounded quite good. This set exceeded my expectations. I don't know what I expect with KZ sometimes, and this is probably my favorite KZ set, which is a trip. One other thing, Spoon Man. Here's a weird thing. When you put more BAs, does it make a difference? It can. It can. But it doesn't mean it's gonna, but it can. This set, I have written right down here, Spoon Man, spoons, 56 seconds, minute and 4, a point that I'm focusing on, then 3 minutes, 8 seconds to 3:28. And I was listening to that, and not this right here, but I was listening to that, and this is what he's actually doing, something similar. This is him, actually. He's older now, like everybody is. Sounds pretty dope. This is a tribute, actually, to Chris Cornell. I picked him up about 4 seconds earlier than I'm usually focused on, and I realized that I was catching him really clearly about 4 seconds before I have written on this timestamp with my copy of what I'm listening to, which is off of this album. So that's pretty good. The resolution of this is pretty decent. Again, BAs have their good points. I'll tell you what. Let me give you an idea here. Let me put the DQ6 up. There's a DQ6 in blue. You can see it's got a lot more energy in 10. I'm going to explain this in a way. Dynamic drivers with elevated treble are something that I can probably tolerate, accept, enjoy. That Sony IER Z1R is an example, because it sounds natural to me. If not a little bit too loud, it doesn't grate on me. Next would be ESTs. When ESTs are done well, it seems that I prefer it over BAs, and I would put BAs last. If I had BAs that were tuned like this, with same as the DQ6, I think I would probably not find it to be appealing. But the DQ6 is using dynamic drivers, and it doesn't have that metallic sheen that balanced armatures have. Therefore, I can listen longer, and it doesn't really... So dynamic drivers, I can accept this. If these BAs were up at the same amplitude, I probably would not be okay with it. So it's not up there. It's down here, and it's BA, and it's doing it well. It's a slightly different listen. It's giving a little bit less energy to the cymbal strikes, 27 and 38 on Can't Find My Way Home, but I kind of find that appealing. I also get the bite on the guitars. The electric guitar or the acoustic guitar on the Rolling Stones. Tired of living, it's easy to do. Wild Horses, fucking love this album. I'm glad I rediscovered this. This sounds dope. This sounds really, really good on this set. Vocals never sounded scooped, though a graph would indicate that's probably the case. They don't sound ideal. They're not perfectly placed, but I didn't find it to be a problem. I didn't think like I'm struggling to catch Mick Jagger, or I'm struggling to catch Aerosmith. Fuck's his name? Steven Tyler. Did I just do that? I did. He's somebody that I listen to. I never thought that somebody I was listening to, you know, that's kind of back, but I can accept that. Just Mark Knopfler slightly, but that's more of the bassist being forward than Mark sounding like he's back because of a dip in the mids, which is sometimes the case. So I find this to be an appealing set. I think it does bass like a good dynamic driver. I think it does mids better than the graph would indicate. Let's take a look at graphs again for a second. This is the 64 audio Tia Trio. And you can see it's got, and the Trio is actually doing this by BA. It's got a dynamic driver down the low end. It's got a wacky, funky mids, but graphs, you don't want everything to sound exactly the same, because what's the point? This set right here that I'm reviewing right now, the AST, is a little bit different in how it looks, but it's kind of appealing to me. I'm not hyping or doing anything. I sat, I listened, I enjoyed. I started doing some bass by myself and then doing some air, hi-hats and cymbal strikes, and thought, this is an enjoyable set. I'm going to do a video for this. I like this. Trying to think of a set that I like better that's made by KZ, and every single one of them, eventually they get slightly tiring because they seem to always have that upper treble point that I can tolerate because it gives a sense of detail, psychoacoustic illusion because the energy, maybe even space, but it'll get tiring eventually. This tuning doesn't do that to me. I enjoy this. I wish it was more of the budget price, like competing with the other stuff that they'd offer, because I would definitely say grab it if that was the case. The thing that's hard to swallow for this is because it's competing with other stuff in a competitive price range. I think it's better than what they've made prior to this, though. I think the little thing like that screen that's on the front is just, it's a symbol of them maybe doing a little bit. Try a little harder. The build quality seems great. Aesthetically, visually pleasing. The cable's better than it used to be. It's a good set. I like it. Is it better than other sets? I'd have to put them head to head, but I definitely like this better than other KZs. And it's all BA, which is a trip because I'm a dynamic driver guy. But this just hits the spot. This reminded me a little bit of the CCA C16, CCA CA16, just a little bit. It's BA, it's got a little bit softer upper treble, but I enjoyed it in the way that I enjoyed the CCA CA16. I think both of these are sets that I didn't expect to impress me, and they did. I think that's the correlation between the two of them, because they don't really look very similar. This one's got slightly less sub bass. It's got more mid bass and mids. This is just a dynamic drive. What is the CCA CA16? I can't remember what the configuration of this is, but I'd have to compare these two. Like, seriously, they don't look anything alike, but they both are pleasing in their own way. So that's the KZ AST. Keep your eye out for the reviews. Listen to people, listen to what they say, listen very carefully, and listen for specifics. What instruments are they talking about? What songs are they talking about? Does that match your library? I'm telling you, the bass guitar sounds great. Kick drums, drum play in general sounds very good. Vocals, while not maybe ideal for people that like that flat playing, I don't feel like I'm really sacrificing anything, and there's nobody. Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac was not gone. Mark Knopfler was not gone on Sultans of Swing, even though the bassist is always battling with him no matter what set I'm listening to. It was reasonable, a slightly different replay. The upper treble guitar solos, acoustic and electric, sounded good. There were moments when, like with Spoonman, where I thought, I'm picking him up a little sooner than I'm used to picking him up. Like when I literally wrote it down and was OCD, and I'm like, okay, that's what I'm listening for. 4 seconds earlier than I'm listening, I'm picking it up with this set. So I enjoy this set, and if someone said, what KZ should I get? If price wasn't an option, I'd say this one. I wish this was $60 or $70 because it would be easy to say, this is the best one, in my opinion. Remember, I love the AS10. I don't have that anymore, but for some reason that struck me, even though I think the tuning probably wasn't ideal. I like the way that it played back. I like the way this plays back. This is the KZ AST. Surprisingly good set. And I'm out.